Me in the Sandbox is Jamie DeBease of Day One Dental Marketing. And Jamie is just incredibly generous. He has calls all the time where people call him and just they ask him questions about marketing. And he's here today just to share what is it he knows so that if you're stuck at all, or maybe you have a misconception about marketing, um, or you're looking to level up your marketing game, this is the guy to talk to. So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining me in the Sandbox today.
Thanks, Sean. Really looking forward to being here. Ever since we've had this scheduled, I've just been waiting for this. This is really exciting. So thanks for having me on.
So, I think one of the best ways to start would just be like, what do dentists commonly not understand about marketing that is possibly hurting them or keeping them from leveling up?
Gotcha. Well, I think for for where we are, I think there's a challenge when it comes to how it actually. It's more the process. I mean, dentists are very bright people, and it's not a question of they don't know what should be done. It's a question of how do you go about doing it, and how do you do it in a way for marketing that's going to end up bringing in the types of patients that they want to bring in. I would say that it's more the process, and included in that process is starting with a strategy. Once you begin from that strategy, I would say that's your foundation. So I would say that it's the how. How do I make this all happen?
So, on the strategy side, if their strategy maybe is aligned with wrong expectations, is there a chance that, when they're calling you, they're like, hey, Jamie, marketing can just fix all my issues. It's going to fix my lead generation. I'm going to get people coming through the door. Let's work together. And you're like, maybe that's not exactly how things work. Like, are you ever having to realign expectations?
Oh, absolutely. And that's for me, that's a delicate issue because I don't know when I come into a conversation, oftentimes it's usually this is the first time I've met somebody. I don't know what they've had to go through to get to this point. I don't know any of the successes that they perhaps have achieved at this point. I only get a snapshot in time until I get to know them better. Maybe there's additional research that we end up doing. And so it's always a delicate issue. And so I want to find out what they have done to get to this point. And usually one of those questions is, why are you and I having this conversation now? Was there an expectation that you had that wasn't met? Perhaps if they were working with a different agency, or if they were doing something on their own, what did they think was going to happen that has not happened? It's important for me to understand what they're looking for because a lot of times where we see this is such a common misconception is that if I just put all the right things in place, everything works. And much of the marketing that dentists need to have done, and of course there's some exceptions, but the majority of the dentists will need to have search engine optimization and perhaps even some type of ad campaigns. There's a lot of effort that goes into those. There's a lot of behind the scenes work, and it's not always as clear. And Google makes it really easy. Just click on these buttons, put your credit card information in, we get ads up and running for you, and you can do that. But it's not always, actually, it's rarely going to be a successful program with that because there's so many levers in a sense that you need to adjust to be successful. And so that's where we really come in and try and help them figure out, okay, how do we get those expectations aligned with really a better scenario and a more comprehensive strategy.
I know even the term marketing, it's like there's digital marketing, right? There's
Mhm.
online marketing, there's content marketing, and there's all sorts of schools of
Yeah.
thought around marketing. Whether you're listening to Jay Abrams or Dan Kennedy, back in the day, um, or to someone that's more of a contemporary like Seth Godin,
Hmm.
um, or in dentistry, Fred Joyal wrote the book "Everything Is Marketing."
Yeah.
Um, like, in what ways is marketing the same in dentistry, and in what ways might it be different? Because dentistry seems like a unique industry. Um, I know it's probably similar to other small businesses, but I know I went to a conference and I heard a lot of people talking about marketing, and some of the definitions or some of the applications were almost like corporate Fortune 500. this is what marketing is. And it's almost like it was getting conflated with branding, as if like
Hmm.
we're copying Nike strategies or Coca-Cola strategies on branding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have a feeling anything Apple's doing for branding is not something that a dental practice can can emulate
Hmm.
and can copy and somehow implement. And all of a sudden, it's this, long-term strategy where they have millions of dollars, in ad spend to accomplish something.
Yeah.
What is marketing, I guess, from your perspective as it pertains to dentistry?
I look at marketing for dentists as getting found by someone who is looking for what you do. That's it. After that, whatever the next steps need to be. The way that we go about doing marketing, I guess you could say that the philosophy that we put into all of our strategy is, if we're doing external marketing, let's just separate that out. This is, you are trying to bring in new patients, patients that don't have a connection to you, they don't know you exist. And the number one way that they're going to do that after their searching their friends and family network, perhaps maybe even their dental insurance provider. But the number one way after those is they're just going to do a blind search in the sense that I need a dentist, and whoever comes up in the search results, they don't know the difference between one or the other. And so having a strategy that's going to help to propel you into that visible section where you can be found is an essential piece if you're going to try and bring in new business. So it's, to me, when you mentioned branding, rarely rarely is a dental office going to need to rely upon branding, to build this brand in a community. But to do that, you really need to have that brand is more of an internal marketing. It's I've worked with a lot before I began working with dentists. I worked with a lot of larger brands, and they were, as you said, they were putting massive amounts of money into building out their brand recognition, and so that their name stood for something. And when you saw their name, you knew exactly what would happen. But at the small business scale, that's not really reasonable to do that. There just isn't the resources generally. I mean, now if you're talking about a very large organization with hundreds of locations or maybe even dozens of locations in a similar market, yeah, there might be some opportunity to build some brand recognition. But for that one practice owner, or for that practice owner who has a one location, building the brand is more about internal marketing and making sure that your patients who come into that door have the most amazing experience. They know what's going to happen when they're a new patient. They have an idea of what's going to happen before they walk in because they've seen video or they've seen some type of a tour of the office. They've read some testimonials. They walk into the door. They're greeted by someone who is happy that they're there. Whether it's most offices have moved to digital paperwork, call it paperwork, but digital forms. And so whether they've had the chance to fill that out, they do that now. And so every moment of that time in the office would be equated with a positive experience. Even if you're coming there for something less than positive, your experience should be positive. That's building your brand. Because now that person, it become you're hoping that that person becomes a brand ambassador for you by telling their friends and their family. But when you're reaching out, it's very hard to build a brand for a small business, external marketing. So it's all about getting found and getting found for the types of treatments and found by the types of patients you most want in your practice.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, external marketing is not the best place for a small business like a dental practice to try and build a brand with, ad campaigns. But internal marketing
Hmm.
would be the place where they're focused on the experience. So once the patient is in the practice, hey, this is where you're orienting everything you can to control, to dial in what experience am I really giving the patient? And that is creating, as you're doing it consistently, the brand that your patients are coming to have you be known for. It's like, oh, when I think of, Dr. Smiles, this is what comes to mind because this
Yeah.
is the way they keep showing up consistently. And when you were defining marketing, it sounds like, well, whatever helps you become found so that someone looking for something, hey, I have tooth pain, or I believe I need an implant, or something. Now, patients may not know what they need, but as they're searching, the point of marketing is that the practice comes up as someone that's a perfect fit is needing something. You want your practice to be the one that's showing up. So a lot of that sounds like um, there's just a lot of best practices probably when it comes to SEO. How
Hmm.
much of what you're doing is following like a proven path versus what is it this practice is needing?
Yeah.
And we need to be a little flexible or implement a specific strategy.
So the proven path is, first of all, we're doing this SEO on and typically through Google search. So it's really critical to best understand how Google wants to get to gather their information, how they want not just, I'll just say businesses in general, how they want businesses in general to prepare their information. So that's website, that's additional content, that's understanding how the business what the business is, and Google wants to have that confidence factor. So there's a lot of steps that go into that piece. So it's first off, what does Google want? I mean, all Google has to do, and it happens periodically, is they have to change some piece of their search algorithm, and you'd have to react to that. So even though you have a really good strategy, so first off, it's understanding what is Google saying. This is what we want. As much as we would love to say, no, Google, this is what you should do, it doesn't work that way. So it's understanding those things and staying on top of that, which is a big part of what we do. So at that point, it's then coming up with those best practices that we know are what Google wants practices, businesses to put into place. So it's the way you structure your website, it's the additional content that you put around your website. And so then it becomes a specific strategy or part of a specific strategy for that particular practice. So in very saturated areas, you're going to have a little bit of a different strategy. You're probably going to need to buy additional visibility. So then it's less of an SEO and more of a Google Ads piece. And so figuring those things out it's at the location level. But I want to go back to one thing that you had said when you were summarizing. There wasn't anything wrong with the summary. You were spot on. That's what I intended. But there's a piece of this that actually kind of gives you both an internal and an external, or there's something that gives you both internal and external, and that would be social media.
Mm-hmm.
So many practices leave, I'm going to call this low hanging fruit. So many practices leave the social media piece on the table. And what they do with that is they themselves do not produce any content. They don't showcase what's going on inside their practice. And their account just sits there with 50 or 75 likes on the entire, maybe they're on Instagram and they might have 25 follows, probably most of which are the friends and family of the dentist or the team members. And so they just leave that on the table. Or they're trying so hard on being content producing machines, but they produce content that nobody's really interested in. And so then there can be this frustrated. So the social media component of it allows it allows practices to showcase the culture of what it's like to be inside the office, whether it's patient testimonials or a tour or even just hearing from the team members themselves. Those practices that embrace that as part of what they do by showcasing, they're getting that internal marketing piece, but then there's the opportunity, depending upon how good the content is, for it to be found, for people to experience it, for people who are looking for, just kind of scrolling through on whatever social media platform they're on. And then there's that discovery aspect of it. But it is a way to bridge or bridge both internal and external and have those for marketing purposes. But the biggest thing when it comes to getting found is there is a transaction, and this is the part that I guess just my background, I let dentists know a person is looking for a transaction when they're looking for a dentist. Now, yes, wrap it with experience, and they definitely want to be pain free. They want to have quality, but they're looking for a transaction at this point. The number of times I've listened to phone calls, and it's a money question. It's a "Are you open at this time?" question. They don't know enough about that practice to know if they're any different than the next one. So in the very beginning, it's a transaction. And you want to make sure that, well, at least we help our dentists make sure that that experience in that moment is so positive for that person, because they're judging you whether they should come in based upon who answers the call. That's the only experience. Or if you have an online scheduling tool, what availability do you have? So it becomes this transactional nature. That's getting found. That's getting seen, and then getting someone to contact you. So that's why we try and help them understand that's the most important piece, because it doesn't matter if you provide this most amazing experience. You are no different than the next person, number 2 on the list or number 3 on the list. They're just looking at your rankings or ratings or anything like that, but they don't know that you are going to give them a great experience.
Okay, so I guess yeah, there's a little bit there that like, so you're being evaluated. It sounds like on a transaction. They're looking for someone to just be able to take care of whatever they're needing at the time. You know, again, maybe they're in pain and they just want to not be in pain. What is the value then of the either patient experience once they're in there? Like at what point does it go beyond a transaction into something where you're not just being evaluated on performance, or is that like, is that all there is to it? Is it just the transaction that they're looking for, and they're just looking for, you know, minimizing risk? That's why they're reading reviews. Like, what's the function, I guess, of the website when they're looking at it from a transaction perspective?
So there's definitely an experience component all the way through. That's never completely pulled out of a patient looking for a dentist. But a potential patient who doesn't yet have a relationship with that dentist, they don't know what that's going to be like. The best they can have is social validation. Someone else said this about them, reviews. Maybe it's ratings, maybe it's also testimonials if they visit the website. But they really don't know, because they haven't experienced whether or not maybe this guy is the nicest guy ever, but he hurts me or she hurts me when I'm at the dentist. They don't know that experience yet. Or maybe someone at the front desk is less than kind. They don't know that. And so those things they won't know that until they're actually in the office. So you showcase, and so you asked specifically about the website. The website is really, I like to tell dentists, this is the I'm trying it before I buy it kind of moment. So from the patient's perspective, if they visit your website, you want to give them everything that's going to take away their fear, as much as you can, their fear, their anxiety of what is it going to be like in there. I love it when dentists are willing to do like an interview kind of format where they'll talk about it. And we do a lot of voiceovers on the websites that we create where they're going to talk about what it's like to be in the practice. Maybe they'll even have some of their current patients come in, and those current patients will share that experience. And then we integrate that into the website design or certain places on the website that future patients can come take a look at. And so now you're really showcasing what it's like. We've had a few of our, recently, we've had a few of our dentists as we've built these websites out where the team members, they're like hugging one another and they're laughing with each other, or they're just kind of showing that it's fun to be in our office. It's fun to be here. Those types of things really help a person say, yeah, this looks like a real person. These look like fun people. I'm going to be able to come in. So that's where the website comes in. But the transactional piece is purely when they're looking around, I need to make a decision, but I don't have that final experience. There's some websites that we design that really tell a story of the practice, that really showcases before and after what it's like to be there. But the truth is the person hasn't experienced that yet. And so the most they can do is they can just see what other people had to say. And so that's that external, that to me, that's that transaction. You want to check off all those boxes or objections that a person might have why they wouldn't want to come into your office. And if you can check those off positively, most likely that person's going to contact you. Most likely they are then going to schedule an appointment.
Yeah, I can see that as you're explaining that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, I was going to say there's something about the fact that like dentistry in some ways is a commoditized
Hmm.
industry where it's like, okay, you expect most general practices to offer the same types of services. We're not talking about anything specialized, just you can do a crown, you can take care of my gums if I have gum disease, you have a hygienist in the practice. So then it's like, well, what really is separating this practice from another? And I love that you hit on the power of a story
Yeah.
and highlighting that, highlighting maybe what the culture feels like, highlighting a little bit about the team dynamics. So you're humanizing it. So when all of a
Hmm.
sudden there's this potential patient that's looking, it's kind of like, do I resonate with that culture, with the way that they're showing up, with the story of the dentist as a human instead of just this professional that's behind a mask, that's distant. Because I imagine, like you're saying, dentistry is also one of those industries where there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Not everyone is excited to go as if they're excited to go to like like a sports game or some form of entertainment, right? There's a lot of anxiety and possible angst. So to be able to kind of share a really clear expectation of this is the way we're going to take care of you. This is how intentional and methodical we are about
Mhm.
making sure that your care is at the center of everything we do. And this is a little bit about why we're different as people, because I don't know how much the dentistry can be different. I'm imagining patients want to know, check, do they use,
Yeah.
are they like a technologically sound practice that is up to standard with the standards of care? And once I've kind of evaluated that, well, I'm sure they're looking for other cues of like, am I going to be okay choosing this practice? How long have you been using that story approach when it comes to like videos on websites? Is that something that has emerged more in the last decade, or has it always been that way?
It's definitely not always been that way. It's really become much more critical, probably the last 4 years. So much, and it's really being driven a lot by the consumption of social media. Prior to the explosion of video as the dominant format on social media, the majority of where you would watch video was going to be on YouTube,
Hmm.
if you wanted to go and do that. And while that's still a pretty important place to go watch video, most people are spending so much time on their social channels that they're watching video content there, and it's almost like we've conditioned ourselves or are conditioning ourselves that this is how we consume media in 15, 20-second, 30-second clips, and then we move on to the next thing. And it's so easy to get lost on these things. The next thing you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes has gone by and you've watched 50, 60, 70 different videos. You don't even remember which ones you've watched except the last couple ones. You just know that it's feeding, in a sense, feeding your desire to move on to the next one. So the format of having video has really exploded based just upon consumer consumption and just expectation. But it's also the most powerful form to build context because it's moving. There's voices that are happening. So still pictures, static images, can help you certainly create an emotion. They can create the culture. They can showcase what's going on, but they don't always give you the context of what's happening. So that's where this video format. I love it when our practices are willing to have a videographer come on site and as I mentioned, not only do interview and talk to people, but they showcase it in a really dramatic way. So this is what it looks like when you're here. So whether it's a video tour or even just showing happy, smiley people at the practice, it's an awesome way to be able to communicate what it's like to be there before you show up. So video itself has become so important in communicating this, but not every practice, and this is a challenge. Not every practice wants or desires to put the time and effort into doing that, and so you almost by not creating that culture, not allowing the story to be built, you as a dentist, I would, or to a dentist, I would say that you want patients to want to know what it's like before they come in. It's almost like it gives this self self-selecting moment Do I want to see this person? Okay, so if they come in and they're already afraid, they're all of the anxiety of just in general coming in to visit a dentist, let alone a brand new dentist, if that's what they're feeling, at least they've seen your face, they've heard your voice, they they can tell that you're a kind, gentle person. They can tell that you're going to be somebody that's going to make them feel comfortable. Photos don't always do that. Video does that, and so it's both a cultural reason, like because of the social media consumption that's available, but also just the expectation of I want to know what it's like before I walk through that door. I want to have a sense of where do I sit down, where do I go, how am I going to make all of this happen so that I'm comfortable in being there.
So there's something really profound that you just said, and it has to do with that moment of self-selection. And like in nor in other marketing for non-dentists, you're always wanting to have there be like criteria where it's like, no, our marketing is trying to actually push people away that are not our ideal avatar, and yet at the same exact time attract those that would. And but the assumption there is that what we're saying and how we're saying it and the portrayal of our office or our message, that there's actually continuity there. And that's where I think a lot of practices that I talk to kind of get this idea, well, no, I need to say these things and I need to say them in a certain way that portrays a certain image. And it's like, well, if that image isn't aligned with the way that your practice is actually showing up, you're doing a terrible disservice to your practice,
Hmm.
because you're seeding in the patient an expectation that is actually not going to be met when they show up.
Yeah,
If you're not the
exactly.
Nordstroms of dentistry, don't hire a video crew and a photographer to position you in that light if you're not committed to really amazing quality care. Because if
Hmm.
they tell that story through the way they position you, the lighting, the script that
Hmm.
they come up with, and then all of a
You're absolutely
sudden,
right.
yeah, and then all of a sudden you're just this kind of churn and burn. Like, you do good dentistry, but you're not going to spend that attention to detail for someone that really wants a specific full mouth restoration. Like,
Yeah,
don't tell that story, because
that's right.
then there's not resonance, there's dissonance, and if anything, you're going to be attracting the wrong patient. So, um, do you ever come across that where practices kind of don't necessarily know what their style of dentistry is or what their expression of dentistry is, and they're trying to just be what they think is trending at the time, instead of finding out, well, how do you do dentistry, and if you have permission to do dentistry your way, let's align a message with that. Like, how much of that comes into what you end up doing for practices, Jamie?
It's very important in the beginning of the time that I started working with a practice. I'll just say the beginning of our professional relationship. We have several discovery sessions, at least two, sometimes three. There's other conversations and clarifications and that come along with that. But during that time, I will ask dentists what probing questions like what you've just talked about. Sometimes I will ask them if you could stop doing this type of procedure altogether, what would that procedure be? If you could only do this procedure, what would it be? What treatment is most fulfilling for you to do? Which are your most profitable ones that you do? Not all practices do the same thing, so those are all good questions. Not every practice is a super GP. Some are just bread and butter. Some are specialty practices. So asking them those questions, but then I'll also ask them questions of what types of patients motivate you to come to the practice. Who is it that if and I'll ask them to give me a name, a first name, and I'll say, why does this person motivate you? What is it about? Like if you had several of these each day, how would your day go better? So through those types of questions, it helps me understand more because a lot of times they're not like what you said. They're not thinking in avatar, persona, this cohort of people that are like this. They're not thinking along those lines. Just thinking, I need more patients. I'd love to have more patients like this. I'd love to have more patients, but they're not really verbalizing that. So it's the key metric a lot of times that practices will say to us is, I want X number of new patients per month. And that's an important number. But I also want to look at what kind of collection does that represent for you? So we might not get the same number of new patients per month, but what if we get the same number of collections? Or something along those lines. How do we measure that? Because not every patient is going to produce the same value for you. So it is building and helping practices understand who their avatar is, and then who their desired patients are, and then from there figuring out in the area that where their practice is, where are those types of people most likely going to be geographically. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's like one corner that they exist, but not every practice has this homogeneous, radius of people around them. Typically, practices, when they're looking for certain types of treatments or would like to have more of it come in, there's some tells as to where there would be more likely to have higher concentration of those people. And so you're coming up with, okay, this is where we want to target, whether it's our ads or maybe the certain towns or something along those lines. And now, what do we want to say to them? What's going to resonate with those types of people? Sean, I'll give you a great example. Just right now, today, we are working with a practice that does a lot of higher end treatments. And the inside of his office looks like a very high end salon. That's the best way I can describe it. And you get this look and feel that you are beyond special when you come in to this. So for anybody that's ever been to a higher end salon or been into a place where it's you are just treated as super special, that's a certain type of person that wants that. And so that's the photography that we're using in the ad campaigns, the wording that we're using. All of those things are to really reach that particular person. But it wasn't until we started working with that dentist, they're like, yeah, well, I want everybody to come in. Well, no, you don't. You don't want everybody to come in. It's very obvious if you're, in this case, they're a fee-for-service practice and they're doing high-end procedures. Yeah, I'm sure you'd love everybody to be able to afford $20,000 to $30,000 worth of treatment, but that's not going to happen. So there's a certain segment of the population around you that is going to want what you have. They just don't know they want it from you yet. And so we want to make sure that when they're looking, you are going to show up in their results, in their search results, or that you are going to be engaging with them on some type of social channels.
And again, that goes back to the beauty of self-selection, where you get that patient.
Yeah.
Maybe in the same exact area code, there's homes that aren't quite as nice. And when they look at that mailer or whatever the ad is,
Mhm.
wherever they're seeing it, you want them to get that feeling of, oh, I probably couldn't afford that. If they can't afford it, you want them to get the idea, this is pretty high end, it's exclusive, it's spa-like. I can't afford that. Because we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. But the Joneses, when they get it, you want them thinking, oh, that's exactly where I belong.
Mhm.
Now, are they really, like, can they prove it? Or when I call them, am I actually going to experience that on the phone? That
Mhm.
it's this high-end Ritz-Carlton concierge type experience, even when I call. And you wanted to make sure that anyone, like you said, that isn't a good fit gets turned off. So
Yeah.
I love that. I can tell it sounds like your agency is like very bespoke. It's very like it's custom tailored to each practice. It's not a one size fits all. This is what we do. This is how we do it. Take it or leave it. Um, how I mean, I know that might just sound like, well, thanks, Sean, but that's impressive, Jamie, because
We
it's hard to
we
scale. It's hard
we
to scale
want
when you do that,
yes,
you know?
we want each experience. So there's standard marketing principles. So no matter who we're working with, there's standard marketing principles. And as I already touched on, there's definitely an understanding of how all of the social channels, how Google is going to work, etc. So that's not going to change. That's consistent. But that the way that it's portrayed in the messaging, whether it's the images, the wording, even the targeting, will be specific to practices. And so it's not only is it those looking for patients who are willing to spend more, but it's also if you're in an area where we work with we work with quite a few practices that really do want every single person that could possibly come in to come in. So in those cases, we don't want people who are only looking for a spa-like experience because that's not what this office is going to deliver. And these are practices that are going to take as many people to come in as they possibly can. And so your portrayal of that is also going to self-select on how you communicate with images, wording, even your targeting with the types of ads and your SEO. So all of those pieces, it works with different groups. And then it also, in some cases, I mean, we're working with some very rural dentists who don't really need any sort of, they don't need any ads, they don't need any SEO where they're located, but they want patients from 50 to 70 miles away because those people need to know that there's somebody that they can go to, and that's not an unusual thing for them. And so it is very customized and specific to each practice, but there's always standard principles that we're going to use for marketing.
You know, I think since dentists are incredibly capable, they could probably just do their own marketing if they wanted to. But do they really want to go into the nuances of personas and avatars and just the psychology of even like design when someone sees an ad? It's like that's why you pay a
Hmm.
specialist that's an expert in this area. So you know you're getting taken care of. It's going to be the best representation for your practice in the marketplace. And marketing, I think, is such an interesting um, specialization because there's so much science to it, right? Like there's the data, they're trying to understand the ads. There's so much science, and yet there's
Hmm.
the art at the same exact
Yeah.
time of interfacing with an ever-changing marketplace.
Hmm.
Um, how much in your communication early on are you letting practices know, hey, this is something you're committing to. It's an iterative process, and we're going to dial it in and achieve more success over time. But it's not something that, like, out of the box, it's not some miracle cure that, similar to like what you think of as a cure. It's like,
Hmm.
well, this prescription is meant for someone that has this condition.
Yeah.
Well, in marketing, it's not just condition, prescription. It's not
Yes.
it's not that black and white. It's this ever evolving market. So, do you find that you're having to adjust people's expectations around the time frame of either return
Hmm.
or how quickly you're going to hit the bullseye?
Yeah. Wow. Lots of great comments in there, Sean. So it is an iterative process. There's no doubt about it. There's a constant learning curve for every single practice. We have no, we do not have a set it and forget it mindset or a set it and forget it kind of processes. So even so we have a process that we tell our clients that we go through. It's called DITRO, DITRO, discovery, implementation, testing, reporting, optimization. And so in our very processes, it's iterative. We get to the testing stage. Okay, so we've come up with our best plan. We're putting it into action right now. But just know there's not only are there external factors, but there could be things where we are going to be trialing things with keywords and content, what's going to produce results, and coming back and forth. And that's another thing from measuring expectations. Rarely do you ever have something, a marketing plan that you can put in place and from the very start produces the results that you expected it to produce. You're hoping, but it is rare that that's the case because there's so many unknowns that until you start getting the science piece, additional data points to really evaluate your hypothesis or the plan that you put in place, it's very hard to get those until you have so much time that passes. And this has become one of the more challenging things is to let practices know that you really need 3, 4 months, sometimes 6 months, maybe even in more competitive or even for some startups, if they're in very competitive areas, you may need longer than that to really hit a stride. Otherwise, it's constantly going back and forth. I wanted to go back to something you had just said there with a practice that was doing the marketing themselves. And we're working on putting together a case study right now. We were working with this practice, and the dentist had been doing Google Ads for about 9 months after they had started. And they were averaging around, well, they told us 4 to 5 patients per month, and they were spending a huge amount of money. And this is not a specialty practice, and and my heart sank because the moment I got a chance to see what this practice was doing in their Google Ads, it was clear they were putting a lot of effort into it, and there was a lot of desperation because you could see changing this and changing that and change. You could see the change history, but none of it was working. And
Mm-hmm.
so the reason none of it was working is because they weren't tracking the right results. They were telling Google this is, in this case here, too technical, but whatever they were telling Google to look more for, Google was doing that and it was bringing in all kinds of traffic, but it wasn't good traffic that was producing leads. So we did an analysis, we did a study, we came up with a better system for them, and then we put this plan in place. And this is part of the reason we're doing this case study is we started with them in November of 23. And about 7, 8 months later, they have been consistently, well, for the next 7, 8 months, consistently been having around 40 new patients per month just from their Google ad campaigns, just from that. And so it goes to show you that doing it yourself, there's a lot of people that have the mechanics down, but it's understanding the science, how you're supposed to play the game, the marketing game with whatever social channel or whatever platform you're on, and then setting those expectations that there is no set it and forget it. You can't. Somebody just a new practice opens up in town and they start spending money on ads. Well, that's going to affect your ad campaigns. A new practice opens up and they're starting to do their own SEO. That's going to affect what happens for you. Or even some of the existing practices, they up their marketing game. That's going to affect it for you. So it's not a static environment. It's constantly changing by the marketplace, the players in the marketplace, as well as the technology. And so it's very challenging to do marketing on your own. And there are some dentists that are very successful at it, but most dentists don't have the time or the appetite to be able to do it without having help.
Not just that, but I feel like a dentist and their team spend so much time making sure that what they're doing is first rate. Great clinical outcomes, taking care of your team, great culture, taking care of their patient, like beautiful patient experiences. That to not entrust something which is the visible outward portrayal of your baby, the thing you care so much about, to someone that's just as much of an expert, it's like they're not an expert, right? They're not an expert in marketing. They wouldn't want someone to go to a non-dentist to get dentistry done. Like you wouldn't do that. So yeah, I don't think it's worth the risk. It's like if you're in dentistry and you've given so much time, so much sacrifice, so much energy to be at the best, it's like, well, you need to align yourself with the best, with a true professional that understands that and can actually handle your brand in a public facing way. If you align with the wrong marketing company, someone that does have just like a out of the box,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have a method or a hack that works, and they're trying to let dentists know, no, we can do it all. We're full service, but really they just know Facebook ads or they just know one thing, and unfortunately, dentists don't know any better. They wouldn't know how to evaluate that. In any industry, there are vendors that are kind of selling snake oil, and I'm sure dentistry is no exception to that. Do you ever encounter dentists that kind of have been burned and they're pretty skeptical when they're talking to you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Uh, as
You're
you're,
like, I
as
know
you're
I
saying this
responded
now, I'm
much.
like all of these practice names and all these dentists are popping into my head. Yes, it is sadly, it is a very common experience, particularly the dentists that have been practicing for more than 10 to 15 years. There's definitely that is a very common denominator that we come across. What I think has happened is that there was this wave of marketing companies that came along and they did a great job of getting practices set up. 15 years ago, so much. I mean, 15. It's only 15 years ago, but 15 years ago, that's like light years when it comes to digital marketing. Huge distance away. Huge distance. So getting a website 15 years ago for many industries was revolutionary. That was like, I don't need a website. And so I didn't build my site based on marketing. I built it because I put a sign up. and I built it because it was my family's business, and so I'm now inheriting that, and that there was a lot of success. So you just put a website up and just put up something, and there was this
Almost like
wait.
the if you build it, they will come idea,
Yes,
right?
yes,
If you just
and
buy
there
the
may.
domain.
Oh man, Sean. Yes, and so some people kind of felt like, well, I have a website, and that's really all that I needed. But there's been so much transformation in search, Google particularly, as well as the development of website technologies, analytics, all kinds of things. There's been so much development in that if you didn't have a company that you were working with that was built upon staying on top of all that technology, then you were running into trouble because they were designed. A lot of the marketing companies were designed or came about to solve the problem of you need a website, you need representation. Even Google Ads 15 years ago was so vastly different than it is today, and you really didn't have much in the way of a social media platform 15 years ago. You didn't have it, and so the way that marketing was done, and so there was a bad experience because there were very few companies that were built, or marketing companies that came into existence whose goal was to be integrative of all these different marketing technologies. So yes, there was this phase. There's also a bunch of people in the marketing space, dental marketing space in general, but dental marketing specifically, that are really good at one thing. And they are really good at one thing. And I won't take anything away from them, but it's rare that a practice is going to build their new patient volume through one channel. It really is. It does happen, but most of our practices, that's not a goal to aspire to. Most of the practices we work with need more of a comprehensive system. And as we're talking to them, one of the things that I make a point of doing is making sure that I tell them why we're doing things. I won't go into unless they really ask, I won't go into the details of numbers, but why do we need to do this? How does this fit into the plan? How does this fit into the program? And going back to, I don't want them to feel burned. I want them to feel trusted, or I want them to trust me. I want them to feel listened to, and that they're a part of the process. And that's another part of that ditro that I was mentioning to you, reporting, is I'm very big on transparency. Everything that we do, a dentist has access to their own information. Rarely do they take me up on it because it's not something that they want to spend their time on, but they have access to it, and we're constantly reporting back to them on the positives, and if there's negatives, even on the negatives, and what we think we need to do to move past that. But getting them to that place where they don't ever feel burned because you told me something that didn't happen. I don't make promises to practices that I can't fulfill. So here's a great one, Sean, that a lot of practices will say to us: can you guarantee a certain number of new patients? And that's not in our vocabulary. We don't talk about guaranteeing. And I will let them know the reason I can't guarantee this is I can't guarantee that your schedule is going to be open when a patient calls you. I can't guarantee that the person answering the phone is going to do an A+ job in converting. I can't guarantee that that patient will on the day of the appointment is not going to be sick or ill or need to reschedule. I can't guarantee because I don't know what the weather is going to hold. I can't guarantee a lot of factors that come into this, that when you get leads coming in that are quality leads, I can't guarantee that they're going to schedule with you. It's just not possible to do. So we don't do a guarantee like that, but we make sure people see the transparency of it because I don't want to overpromise on anything, and I think that's when people feel burned.
I mean, that's just such a good answer, Jamie. Especially with the guarantees. Like in life, there are few guarantees. Even when you mentioned a lot of agencies kind of do one thing. I remember hearing Dan Kennedy like 10 years ago say, like, I don't know one way to get 15 new customers, new patients, but I know roughly like 15 ways to get one a month.
Hmm.
And maybe that's a little extreme. Maybe it takes 5 or 6 different ways, and each of them brings in two or three.
Yeah,
But the idea was there isn't a silver bullet.
right.
You have to keep evolving as the market's evolving. You have to keep kind of up to date with what the different strategies are, the different tools that you can implement. If someone right now is in a contract or working with a marketing company, are there any yellow flags or possibly red flags that might that they could see or that they could identify? It's like, oh, I'm working with a marketing company that maybe isn't producing ROI or doesn't have my best in mind. I don't know. Like, if there was someone that was just kind of scamming them, how would they know? What could they look for? What questions could they ask even of their marketing company?
Wow, you're doing a great job of this. So this is also part of what when people contact me in that initial consultation. I'm not a high pressure salesperson. I would love for just about every single person who calls me to want to work with me. I know that that's not going to be the case, and many instances they are in a contract. And I think that it's telling if they're already in an agreement with an agency, but they're looking for something else. There's already an unsettling feeling. Something's not going right, and so I want to know what that is. But I want to know what that is to make sure it's something that I can, if they wanted to work with me, I could solve, or I could minimize in their case. But some of the yellow flags often look like I haven't heard from my marketing agency. I'm not seeing an increase in my numbers. Sometimes it's as simple as I'm spending all of this money on Google Ads, but I don't know what I'm getting for that. As a marketing company, I'm going to help you understand. Here's whatever that we're tracking, whether it's calls or forms or downloads or whatever we're tracking. Here's who downloaded. Here's who called you. You can listen to the recording. You can see what's going on. So I think that some of the yellow flags are when the marketing company has kind of backed off when you expected that they wouldn't. Now that doesn't mean that's automatically a problem. Some marketing companies, for example, some of the clients that I work with have specifically told me, let's have a quarterly check-in. That's it. That's all they want. I don't have time to talk to you. If there's a problem, let me know. Otherwise, I'm assuming there's no problems. Some of the clients that we have worked with are much more hands-on, and they want to meet weekly, and so we meet weekly with them. So whatever that comfort level is, we want to make sure that they have that. But so one would be that sort of disengagement. The other would be, are the numbers not where you line up? I think a third one would be they're not telling you how to do something different. They're not making suggestions to you. Sometimes those suggestions really are, you should be spending more money. You should be. In some cases, that's a suggestion. So don't always think that they're trying to take your money. You want to question them. Why do you think this is going to be better? But sometimes you could be in it. Particularly if you're doing Google Ads, you could be underspending, and so for a little bit more, you might have increased visibility. So you want them to be offering you suggestions periodically, because it would indicate that not only they're engaged in your marketing, but they're trying to figure out, okay, I see something here as the marketing expert for you. I would like to go from here to the next place to level up. Here's my suggestion to do that. So I think those would be some really good yellow flags to look at, as far as if you're working with a current marketing company.
So how long on the phone would it take you to kind of diagnose or audit if something seems a little fishy?
Okay,
Like,
fortunately for
like if I'm a dentist right now and I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Something kind of feels off.
yeah.
We're about a year and a half in, and I don't really know what I'm paying for. I'd love to give Jamie a call. Is that something where you're open to doing just a
Mhm.
little conversation, a little bit of
Sure.
audit, just to kind of say, you know what? This sounds like there's nothing weird going on here, or it sounds like, wait, you're paying what?
Yeah. So before I get on the call with, so in a normal consultation, I will have at least 24 hours before I talk to that person. That's usually the way we schedule things. So during that time period, my team and I will have some preliminary research that we do, so that when I get on that call, I can maximize the time for that. So I am prepared for those conversations, and having done this enough, there are certain things that I look for to ask questions about. Uh, Sometimes it's to bring up, I'm concerned, this is what I'm seeing. Other times it's, I don't understand why this is happening. Can you explain that to me? But I will always ask them, why are you, if they have an agency, what is it that you're looking for? And I will help them do that. We will audit we'll audit their digital footprint in that conversation. Now, Sean, if you were the dentist and you came up to me and we were at a conference and you said, "Hey, can you take a look at my website?" I can, in 10 to 15 minutes, I can diagnose your website and some of it, its strengths and its weaknesses rather quickly. Other things does take time. So website diagnosis and audit doesn't take a whole lot of time. I can show people what needs to be done. My team is amazing at this. So whether it's me or anyone on my team to be able to do that. But diving into numbers, and this is a common one, is diving into the Google Ads. There's so many things for Google Ads. Something like that, it's not going to happen over the phone, and that would be a subsequent follow-up.
Okay. So if I'm a new practice and I'm like, you know what, man, I'm just not getting enough patients right now. Marketing seems so broad, and I don't know if I'm ready for a marketing agency. Do you think a good first step is still contacting an agency like you and just kind of determining, what's the situation, what's the lay of the land, what are their goals, or do you think that's too premature for kind of like a startup practice?
No, not at all. I think startups, if they've gone through the process of choosing a location, if they've already decided a town, an area that they're committed to, and hopefully they've hired someone to help make that choice because they're going to do all the number crunching and the likelihood of their success. So I like when a startup practice has already done that, because then I know there's already been analytics done on the population, what types of other dentists are in the area, the ratio of dentists to this population. And so when those have already happened, that's a fantastic thing. If those haven't happened, I am concerned that that the practice may be picking a place that doesn't, unless there's some known entities there, they're picking a place that is going to produce challenges. So for a startup practice, I always encourage them to have that type of consultation or business consultation or some sort of startup help in the beginning. But once they know they're going to open up an area, at that point they should be doing marketing. And what the marketing looks like is, how am I going to connect with the people in this area that don't know? I've never been here before. They don't know anything about me. So it's going to work in the first stage is going to be an introduction, blanketing the market with "we're coming soon." So many months, typically about 3 months out from, maybe 4 months out from when they're going to plan to open. Social media campaigns.
So it sounds like you've done this before.
Once or twice.
I'm
So
like, wow, he knows what he's talking about.
so starting in advance, it's not really ever too early as a startup. Now, some things don't make sense to start dropping, whether it's mail or ads or social media. It doesn't make sense to do that until so many months ahead of time. But having a website, having at least a home page on your website 6 months out, it begins to let Google know there's a dentist that's going to be in this area. So you begin to start getting some traction there. This has actually been one of the. So I've spoken to quite a few places, a few dental schools as well, and advising for those that are going to be going into startup. 1 year, because sometimes it takes about a year if you're doing a build out, things like that. 1 year out, you can start. Now you may not have everything in place, but you can start that process building. My agency, we build custom websites. And so everything for us, while there may be some features that look, that you kind of pull from other websites in a sense, but they're not a template in the truest sense. So for us to build a website, it's usually a 2 month process of design and building, and then usually around 30 days of testing. So we really say 3 months out. So if you want to have a website that at least has a home page, 6 months out, 9 months out, we really want to begin the process. We also, as far as hiring us, we want to do an analysis of what's going on in the marketplace and then track that over time. Going back to the science part, the numbers guy in me loves that because I can see what's trending in your area. So we get a higher degree of confidence in how we want to start your plan, whether it's certain keywords, whether it's the bidding structure on ads, whether it's the content that we want to use to help propel you in the search results. The longer of a runway you give a marketing agency, the more successful you're going to be. We had, as a counterexample to that, we had somebody that contacted us about a year and a half ago. Was 3 months, been open 3 months. They were not getting any new patients in. They had a website, but they weren't getting any new patients in, and they ultimately decided not to work with us because what we said you needed to do is you needed to basically play catch up in many areas because of how late it was in getting to go their marketing. So they didn't end up working with us. But that to me was a sad case. I can't imagine what it's like to spend all of this money, all of this time, all of this sweat equity to build your baby of a practice and to not dedicate the resources to it to feed it in a sense from a marketing perspective. And that's sadly what this particular dentist had done.
Yeah, and again, I feel like that kind of goes to expectations. It's like it's no longer okay to buy a domain, to set up a sign and be like, "Hey, we're a dentist, we're in business," and everyone's just going to come. And I feel like dentistry got sloppy simply because people need dentistry. You look at the restaurant industry and like 90% of them fail in the first year because as consumers for food, we're pretty picky and we expect amazing service, amazing consistency. Like the margin for error that we accept is so low. But when it comes to dentistry, it's like, oh my gosh, can someone, I don't know, is there just someone that I can trust that's going to do a good job? That I don't know, they're not going to rip me off and there's going to be low pain. Um, and when you're in pain, and sometimes there's just one appointment you can get because it's convenient, you're willing to accept a much larger margin for error. And it's allowed there to be kind of sloppier dentistry. But it's like times have changed. Competition's gone up. Especially I feel like with DSOs coming in
Hmm.
where, big
Yeah.
Fortune 500 investors came in and they're like, hey, there's money to be made in dentistry. It's like more than ever, I think that the solo practices and the solo GPs are realizing like, yeah, we have to up our processes. We have to up the systems,
Hmm.
the service that we offer in our practice. And at the same time, you have to have a marketing presence. Um, and it's just part of the game these days.
Yeah.
And you got to play the game the right
Hmm.
way. Um, you need to invest in order to continue to grow
Yes.
your practice.
Yeah. I'll use the analogy so if someone comes to me and is skeptical of the amount of money that it takes, that we say, this is what it's going to take to come in. I will break it down in many different ways to help them understand how many hours does it take for you to make this money as a practice? How many procedures does it take for you just to cover the cost? Okay, so then we start doing some multiplication and I say, so what you're telling me is you are, in many cases, it's you are afraid to invest money to grow, but you want to grow. So there's the currency of growth in most cases is your marketing budget. In most cases, that's what you're going to have to do to grow. Now, that's for a startup practice or a practice that really has to, if they're taking on an associate or they've begun some type of new treatments and they really don't have enough of a they don't have enough of a patient base that they can do a lot of referral based marketing. So for startup practices or practices that are really trying to grow, you have to tap into that marketplace that is already searching for what you have, what you're offering. They just don't know you have it. So that's going to cost time, effort, and money to be able to get into that. That's your marketing investment. And in most cases, it does take months not everything takes months, but in most cases it takes months to be meaningfully to get a meaningful return on that. And so that's an expectation that if anything, that's what I would love for dentists to really, and again, it's not all of them, but it's ones that, so in any industry, you've got people that are absolutely killing it and they're telling their story of how they're absolutely killing it. And I did this. And they did, and they've done an amazing job, and kudos to them. And they're sharing with other people, this is what I did. The challenge with that is to reproduce that in all of the marketplaces that people are seeing. This one person had this most amazing success, so I'm going to follow this one person, and I'm going to do what they did. It doesn't always work like that because timing is critical. You get in at a certain timing. You saturate the marketplace with certain things. You meet the right people. There's so many variables to it. So again, coming back to a more strategic vision for how marketing is, rather than always following somebody else's process, it's how do you do this in your marketplace? How do you do it for your practice? Something else that is often untouched in marketing is the personality of the dentist and the temperament of the dentist. Not in a negative sense, but some dentists are just excited to know that they have marketing, and it has unburdened them. Someone is finally doing this for me. The weight of me trying to figure out how to do this, and I'm reading these articles, and I'm following the one of the people that I often follow, is one of the top SEO people, and this person knew who that was. I'm like, how do you, as a dentist, know this person? Why are you following him? Let me do that job. And so unburdening them from trying to make all these mistakes, or preventing from all these mistakes. So the temperament and their personality type, I think, also factors in. Some are very aggressive. We're working with one practice right now that his particular goal is to bury the competition from a visibility standpoint. That's his temperament. And so we've come up with a strategy that's not just to spend his money, but to do what he wants. He wants to be a dominant force in that marketplace, and that's his temperament. Other places are more like, hey, I want to be friendly with everybody in a sense. So I don't want to rock the boat. That's their temperament. So we take into respect all of those things, as well as the marketing strategy, what that dentist really wants to be known for in their marketplace, which kind of touches a little bit on who they are and their branding, but also it's a component of figuring out the overall strategy for that practice.
One of the things you also said, Jamie, was about kind of like this seemed like it worked, so let's just copy that. I think some of the problems there is that what I've seen is that the curve is like an exponential curve, and oftentimes it's years of groundwork, and then all of a sudden they do one thing differently, and they wrongly attribute the one thing that they did and say, well, this is why, ignoring the 36 months that preceded, where they still were marketing. They were elevating it steadily. They were doing this. They were getting a social media presence. They were being consistent. And then all of a sudden they implement one little tactic and things start blowing off or blowing up. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was this tactic. It's like, well, no, you were consistent for 3 years. And now you're just going to give all the credit to the last tactic you used when you were layering them. And
Yeah.
truthfully, since it is an exponential curve, if someone hasn't started yet, you have to lay that foundation. And it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And you need to be in it for the long game. And it's like, to the dentist out there that's thinking like, well, hey, I can figure this out with the best of them. I believe you can. You're
Yeah.
brilliant. Like, let's just get the check the box on that. I see you. You're brilliant. You can figure this out. But there's a trade-off. And it's the opportunity cost of what you could learn that could help your practice way more than trying to learn the ins and outs of marketing.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense. If you're wanting to get to a target of, like you said, either market dominance or fulfillment in your practice, you have the dream practice, you love being chairside, you love just wet finger dentistry, then leverage your money. Leverage the money your practice is making. Invest in a great marketing company like Day One. Partner with them. You can trust them, and stay doing the things you love instead of feeling like you have to take on and demystify the challenge of marketing.
Right.
Marketing is so multifaceted, multidimensional. Like, to nerd out for a while, I think it was like 12 years ago where I got really into HubSpot and the idea of inbound marketing. And prior to that, I'd been learning about Dan Kennedy's direct response marketing and how he was saying, hey, the whole idea of like ethereal brand building for these long-term relationships doesn't make sense. Every single time you do something, it needs to have a direct response where someone has a chance to opt in, someone has a chance to raise their hand, someone has a chance to take the offer. There needs to be scarcity and urgency. And then I'm learning about, inbound marketing and content marketing, and how together we're kind of positioning ourselves as the expert, and we're building like a database and taking people, nurturing them through these funnels. Is there a place for nurturing, for funnels, for inbound marketing in dentistry? Or is it really all kind of just simple bread and butter direct response where, hey, look, right now you saw an ad, there's something you can do right now to opt in, to call, to get this offer. How do you feel about those two strategies and which one is working in dentistry?
It's not in either or, it's both, but it's very specific to the practice. So when let's just take different types of treatment options. So a person that needs emergency, or at least feels that they need some type of emergency treatment, there's no nurturing. They need something now. Whoever's open, whoever they can get in to see the quickest, that's who they're going to reach out to. So there really isn't much in the way of a sales funnel or nurturing funnel for them. But that doesn't mean that once they become a patient, that you don't have some type of additional content going out to them. But at least that particular person, you're not going to be sending them a follow up. Hey, are you still in pain from 3 weeks ago? It's not going to happen. It's not how that works. For patients that are looking for a new dentist, for whatever reason, they're unhappy with their current one, they don't have one, they've moved into the area, maybe they want somebody closer, whatever, there's not really much of a nurturing opportunity there because they are just looking for whoever's going to check off enough boxes for them to contact. But again, once they become a patient, how are you following up with them for additional treatment options, educating them, various life stages? So there's definitely an internal sales funnel that you can build for them. Patients that are usually more on where the treatments are going to be more high level, whether they're going to cost more, but also they're much more involved. Those are the ones that you often have the best case to use for a nurturing series. So I'll give you an example. Someone wants a cosmetic procedure, advanced cosmetic procedure. Whether it's all veneers or they want they just basically do not like the way that their smile is, and this is going to be an advanced process for them. So they're going through the process of figuring out, who do I like? Rarely is that, I try and explain it this way to a dentist. The person doesn't have their own dentist or doesn't have somebody that does this work. They don't know anybody who does this work. I'm going to go to my phone and I'm going to look up cosmetic dentist in my town or some variation of that. And there's going to be a list of people that show up who I don't know. It's rare that they're just going to contact one of those people and say, I'm ready to give you, doctor, $10,000 today. It's rare. There's got to be you want to date them a little bit. Let's just put it that way. Get to know one another a little. Now, for the person that is willing to just drop that money right in there, that's fantastic. But a lot of times what it's going to take is a little bit more of a communication. Download our material, download what this process looks like. Now you've got them in your data, in your sales funnel. You can send them a little bit of information, a little bit more, always with the idea that we're ready to help you when you're ready. Here you can schedule here, you can call us here. So those types of things to help a person get to a place, typically when you're doing something like that, there's usually a couple week to maybe a 30-day decision-making period. They're figuring out, who do I want to go see? They're also figuring out what it costs. Most people have no clue what these more advanced dental procedures cost until someone finally gives them a number. They finally look up, Google, what does this procedure usually cost? And when they get over that shock value of it and disbelief of what it's probably going to cost, then they're like, okay, this is something I want. Who do I want it to go through? So yeah, there's still definitely room for sales funnels that are in place. But one of the things that I think is very underutilized for all of our clients is the internal marketing piece. Most will only send an email as a reminder, a birthday, maybe an anniversary, maybe something specific that's happening in the practice, but rarely is it intentional and strategic. And most already have the technology in their office, or for very little bit, $100 a month type subscription to get some of these technologies in place. But it is a time, effort, and energy piece. But it does yield a lot of results. So yeah, there's still places for both marketing funnels and direct consumer action, but really depends on the practice and what they're looking to have done.
Okay, so let's see if I can try and summarize what you just said. Um, if there's a patient that is needing an emergency service, there is absolutely no point in having some nurture sequence because I'm in pain. I need something now. I'm I'm going to find somebody and probably make a decision within 24 hours, whatever,
Right.
soon. If it is more of an elective treatment, possibly a high-end cosmetic treatment, then there's a chance that I'm really doing research and I'm wanting to be courted, dated to some extent,
Hmm.
educated, and that's where some sort of a education content nurture campaign can be utilized correctly. But every single practice could elevate their internal onboarding, nurture sequences where you already have patients and you don't realize you probably already have the software. And all you could do is spend a little bit more time and
Yeah.
intention and strategy to currently engage the or the patients that are already in your practice, make them feel seen, heard, connected with by implementing some sort of internal marketing funnel.
Yes. Yes. That internal marketing funnel, one of the parts that I ask people during discovery is how are you educating your patients on all of the services you offer? And so a lot of times that is, well, we let patients know we do this and we do that. But chairside, it's very awkward when you have a person chairside and to say to them, "Are you interested in X?" If that person has never once raised their hand or indicated that they wanted that. So to have a better process, whether it's in the waiting, marketing materials in the waiting room or something like that, videos going where, you're saying these are all the things we do, but also you can do that through whether it's email or in some cases, maybe even if text messaging would be the option, but through email is like, this is something that we're known for. That way it's not in the moment, hey, I notice your teeth are really bad. Would you be interested in this? Because then it comes across as salesy and insincere. But
Hmm.
if you educate the patients on all that you do multiple times, multiple touch points, then they're aware that if they feel like that's something they want to explore, they can come to you. It's such a common concern that our practice, or at least I feel like the practices we have is that their patients don't know enough about what they do. And so addressing that internally and coming up with other strategies for communicating that to them is definitely an underutilized aspect of internal marketing.
I mean, I just love that because even as you're saying that, like I hear from dentists all the time, like I don't have enough new patients. So it's this idea of this obsession over attract, attract, attract. When it's like what's often overlooked is like, okay, but are you nurturing? Are you cultivating? And
Mhm.
are you deepening the relationships you already have? Because chances are they don't know your story that well. They don't know everything you do. They don't know what you're known for. They don't know possibly the transformation that you can have or you could actually create for them. And that's like a gold mine that you're sitting on. Patients
Yeah.
that typically, if they keep coming back, they already know, like, and trust you. So I could see how a little effort there, a little bit more of intention, a little bit of leveling up could go a long way.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely. And
that's really helpful.
it's not a sales approach. It's an education approach.
Mm.
And I think that that's where the authenticity comes in on the practice side is if you let them, everybody know we do this, but you let them know in such a way that it's we're here if you want this. We're not trying to push this on you. And that's some dentists don't have a problem being well, if it wasn't in the dental space, we would say don't have a problem in upselling people.
Mhm.
Okay, but in the dental space, using the word sale and upsell is probably, people don't like to use that. But essentially, I know it is like that. But essentially, what you're saying is we have some other things that we can do that you may be interested in.
Other outcomes that would be
Yes,
positive for them
but
for
if your
longer term
patient,
health goals.
that's exactly right. But if your patients don't know that, then they when that moment comes, they may not look to you, or in general they may not think that there's even a solution to this. Now,
Mhm.
that's not always the case, but it's definitely important for a practice to keep in touch with their patients. This is Going back to something we already talked about, this is creating your brand. This is the if you're an educator, I'm educating you. We're giving you customer service. We're making you feel welcomed and appreciated. We want you to be here. We want you to have not only an amazing experience, but we want you to know that we genuinely care about you and your health outcome. And if you're not interested in cosmetic procedures, we're not going to lead with them. We're not going to come in and say you should, consider doing these or have you considered this. But we are going to educate you on that. That is how you build your brand with your current patients so that they know that and can trust you. They know you, they can trust you, they can believe you when you tell them, I think this might be a good place for you to explore, but after they've already brought it up to you. But if they don't know, but some practices are not very good at that. And as such, they don't have systems to even kind of help them along. Other practices are just, and we don't really work with many like this because it's not the type of practice I typically will work with, where they're just known for, we are going to do as much as we can to get people here for as many procedures as we can. Ethically, but they'll push procedures in a sense of like, have you considered this? And they will suggest a lot of things that maybe the patient hasn't wanted. That's fine, that's for them. But most of the practices we work with are not like that.
So, Jamie, you guys do what people would normally view as marketing, which is like external marketing, but it sounds like you guys can also help with internal marketing campaigns.
We absolutely can. Mostly what it comes down to is there's two big pieces to it that often, I guess you could say, often have to be in place in order for us to proceed. One is the practice has to have some type of email system that is HIPAA compliant.
Okay.
So as long as they have an internal system like that, and then the second piece of that is they have to have a dedicated amount of time or a person that can interact with us in coming up with some, like we can give general messaging, but we don't do template. So we really need to have a person who can sit with us. The biggest challenge though often comes down to that technology piece is a lot of practice management softwares. In order to access information or to use information, you are limited in what you can say to people. And so many times there needs to be a third party type software or an additional subscription. Not all the time, but most of the case that's what it comes down to. And so it's another expense. It's another thing that a person has to have. So if they have all the pieces in place, it's just a question of coming up and aligning with the strategy that we already have to communicate with what patient groups. I mean, there's, Sean, if you, since you've mentioned HubSpot and you've mentioned other things, you know as well as I do, the level of the way that you can segment your patient population is astounding, but it does require thought. And so you can target anybody who's got any parent who's got a patient that's in this age, who's got a child that's a patient in this age range, and you can send them content. You can target patients that have come in that have had this particular treatment that you know that in so many years from now there's likely to be a follow-up that's necessary. You could be sending them content to prepare them for that. There's so much that can be done, but it is a lot of time on the practice part because you have to really you have to essentially look at every single person as a future marketing opportunity. Adding that to everything that the practice has to do when they just want to get somebody scheduled for the next visit, oftentimes it's challenging to make that happen.
Okay, so here's an interesting one. When social media started really taking off and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Snapchat's not going to be around for a while. Then all of a sudden it stayed. Oh, TikTok's not going to be around. Then it stayed. Clubhouse came and I think it went. Are there any marketing fads that, because I mean, it's probably this tough tension of like, oh, something new's coming up on the horizon. It sounds like it could be the new thing. And I'm not talking about social media. I just mean like as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any things that right now are either trending or have maybe even just in the last 5 years that turned out to be fads that really didn't have any credence to them?
At the moment, the only thing that I'm thinking of to encourage dentists to explore in their communities is Nextdoor. That's the only one at the moment that I'm thinking of. but I would say only be in that space if you are willing to engage in that space. At the moment, the biggest things right now are less about platforms, I think, and more about figuring out how to get content in a way that the search engines really want. Because see, to answer your question, it's more about how do I get my website to show up, and there's different technologies to make that happen. There's different ways to make that happen. There's different looks to make that happen. But as far as the latest and greatest, there's been a lot of things that have come and gone. One thing you didn't mention was mobile advertising. You know, the little ads that show up at the bottom of your phone that pretty much nobody clicks on, or you know, you fat finger click on it or something along those lines. Those have come and gone. Snapchat, by the way, Snapchat, although technically had its heyday, it's still very popular. And one of the amazing tools about Snapchat is the ability to what's called geofence. You can block in a particular area, and anybody that's in the app in that area that comes in, you can send a message to people, or they can get it. I mean, it's a really cool technology, which would be which I think is a fantastic tool for places that do a lot of work with orthodontics or things like that. But there are already people that are in there, so it's just an opportunity to keep in touch with people. But Nextdoor is another one. There's a lot of people that are on Nextdoor. There's a lot of practices that probably don't realize the impact that they could have by just showing up and being a friend, in a sense, in the Nextdoor community. There's some places that it's very popular, but at the moment I can't think of anything that I'd say this is kind of on its way out. All of the majors right now that you mentioned, you know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're not going away. They are firmly entrenched. People do age out. There's different age. I mean, they have their different audiences, so you have to be careful. You can't just be, I'm only going to be on this one. So if you're only looking for a certain age group, maybe you pick one of those. But eventually, people get to the point where they're looking for other things. But yeah, that's what I would think of. I can't think of anything at the moment that I'm thinking is on its way out.
So, what's the worst advice that some marketing companies, not necessarily in dentistry, just marketing advice that you hear that you think is probably the worst advice that's currently going out or around?
Wow. Okay. This just came up. This is just a few weeks ago. Your questions are very timely. Either that, or I'm getting a lot. I'm getting a lot of good case material. So we're working with a dentist recently, and well, we are working with a dentist just recently, and they had been reading someone. I would say that is a well-known person in the dental space, and this particular person advised them to put all of their money, all of their marketing resources into promoting Facebook ads. That was it. That was their marketing strategy. And to invest in all kinds of localized content, because that's a few other things we've touched on before. That was how they are seeing success. So what that looked like was hire us to come in, and we're going to do a photo video shoot. We're going to get all of your content, and then we're going to promote this on socials with some sort of call, you know, whatever the call to action is to contact you, schedule online, download, whatever the particular thing is, and that's where you should spend your money. And so there's nothing wrong with doing that, if that's the audience you want. But what that does is it really neglects the people that are already going on to search, kind of raising their hand and saying, "Hi, I'm looking for a dentist." And so you put all your money into that. So that was something else. Another one that we just we were talking, or I was talking to a dentist about a month ago. His current marketing company really advised him to have ads running 24/7. Like, here's your budget. You need ads running 24/7 for all of these things. And so he allowed us to take a look at his analytics, and one of the things you can see in analytics is what are people doing for ads at certain times. And you could see that he would get a lot of ads delivered after hours, but there wasn't a lot of lead generation that was coming from that. And so the rationale that the company had told him was you need to spend a lot of money so Google knows that you're serious. I mean, these are my words. So Google knows that you're serious, and so that way they're going to start showing you top. and everything. So there's a little truth in that, but not enough to spend that kind of huge amount of money over that time period. Google does need to know that you're serious by spending ad dollars, but definitely not like that. So those are some of the two recent situations where I was educating our clients. Well, one is a client, the other one is not at the moment, but educating them on, okay, this is not how it works for long term. This is not how it works ongoing, and this is not a comprehensive system. And that's what I tell all of our every conversation I have our clients or even potential is we're working on a comprehensive system. That's it. Sometimes, yes, more money needs to be directed to social. Sometimes more to Google Ads. Sometimes more in SEO. It all depends on the outcomes that you're looking for and the types of patients you want to reach. How do we differentiate where those marketing resources and marketing dollars are going to go?
Okay, so Jamie, you've been a rock star, but I have one more question for you, and it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So 90 minutes of you going and being here, giving everything, and I'm mean enough to give you a challenge at the end. So, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, some of the greatest investors, if not the greatest investors of our time. And one of the things that Charlie Munger is famous about saying is that as humans, we're actually really good at figuring out what we shouldn't do, it's easier to identify what would fail.
Hmm.
So can you come up with a list of 10 things that dentists could do if they want to fail in their marketing?
Absolutely. I already know some of these because I've already given a talk on part of this before. So this is great. Not totally being thrown off. First thing they should do if they want to fail is to not record all of their logins and passwords. This has been a huge problem that we've run into where they have no idea where any of it is. Second is to ignore everything that is going on. Just set things up and expect nothing's going to change. I don't know if I'm going to get to 10, but I'm going to get to these. Second is to ignore it. Third is to build a website and to not make meaningful changes to it or updates to it every couple years, just leaving it static. So fourth would be I would say to try and do things on your own, or do everything on your own. Fifth, I'm looking at not investing enough money, and I'm going to use the word enough because there does become kind of a sweet spot to try and to bring in the types of patients and the volume of patients that you want. Next thing I'd see, so that's five. So we're looking at six here. So
You're doing good.
all right. So I would say ignoring engagement with your patients or potential patients, and that could look like not responding to reviews online. If you have social content up and people say things like, "Hey doc, it was great," maybe not so much responding to them being a patient, but you put a post up and it's a picture of you a picture of the doctor receiving a gift from a thankful patient, and a whole bunch of people saying, "I love you, doc. I love you. I love you," and you not doing anything, just ignoring that. So ignore the people that are reaching out to you on social channels. Let's see. Don't have a review strategy.
So
Now,
number 7. Okay.
okay, so if you don't have a review strategy in place, it's a huge component of SEO. So if part of your marketing is to get people from search results, you really need to work on getting reviews. It's a huge component that Google factors into determining how you show up in the search results, but it's also an enormous piece of social validation. You know when you're looking at something, whether you're going to buy a product or someplace else, you mentioned restaurants earlier. If you're going to look at a restaurant, you're going to look at what people are saying. Maybe not read all the reviews, but you're going to look at that. I think another thing that is going to cause people to fail is to not be is being unwilling to experiment. You should have an experimental marketing budget. We briefly touched on some things about like when something new comes along, maybe it's not a new platform, but maybe it's a new opportunity. Be willing to take a risk. Have a few $1,000s of an experimental budget just to try it and see. Don't be so locked into everything that you're doing to assume that nothing else is going to work. I think another thing that's going to cause failure or a dentist to fail is not hearing what your patients are telling you, not listening to the feedback that they're giving to you from a that you can take and do actionable with. We monitor all the reviews that our clients receive, and we come up with sentiment analysis. We're looking at any sort of trending components to that. Fortunately, we work with amazing dentists, so we don't really see too many things that are negative. But a lot of times, we'll see certain words coming up on a regular basis that we can let our doctors know about. So not listening to your patients what they're saying. And if I can come up with a number 10, this would be amazing.
Drum roll. If not, I've got a few just to throw out there.
You do? Oh, okay. Well, let me see if I can try it first. Oh, I know. This is one that I probably should have said in the very beginning. Have a marathon mindset with marketing, not a microwave mindset. So if you, I'm sorry, let me do it the other way around. Fail. That's the succeed. If you want to fail, have a microwave mindset. In other words, I should get it back right away. I put something in, I'm doing marketing, it should come back today, next week. Why am I waiting months? Have a long-term view if you want success. Have only a short-term view if you want to fail. Maybe that's 10. I hope
That
that's
is
10.
10. That was amazing, man. Very, very impressive because it's hard to think using inverse thinking, and especially to come up with 10 things at the end of a long talk like this. I had the luxury of thinking while you were speaking, and just some of the stuff that came to mind is like, in order to make sure you will absolutely fail in your marketing, don't ever start. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
stay on the sideline and just think you can't figure it out. You can't hire the right people, and you will automatically fail. Never listen to anyone on your team because clearly you know everything.
Yes.
So you don't need to talk to your team.
Those are good. Those are
That's
good.
that's a really good way you can fail. Thinking that you're going to hit the bullseye in month one, that's a
Hmm.
really good mindset to approach marketing with to ensure you're going to fail.
Yes.
Um, and ignoring everything that Jamie said in this entire 90 minutes is a great way to
You're
ensure
too
that
kind. You're too
you will
kind.
probably
Thanks.
fail. Um, Jamie, I really appreciate you, man, just showing up with such generosity. Like, man, the rigor to just handle so many of the questions I threw your way and your expertise. I can just tell, no matter what I threw at you, you understand marketing, you understand dentistry, and it's so clear your heart is to help. And that's exactly why you've shown up in such a generous way. Like, thank you so much for joining me in the sandbox today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. I'm so glad to be in the sandbox. One of the things I was thinking of was from a sandbox perspective, when I was a kid, I played in the sandbox a lot. One of the things I like to do was I like to bury things and try and look for that treasure. I hope that today I've helped somebody uncover some really good treasure for your listeners. And just thank you again. This has been my pleasure to be here today, and I really do thank you.
Okay, so the last thing I'm going to say is the treasure that I discovered as you were talking that I wasn't expecting was that idea of the moment and how important that was of self-selection. Because this idea that we want everybody, we want to cater to everybody, it's just not true. We actually want everybody that's not a good fit for us to look at something and go, nope, not interested. This isn't a good fit for me. Nope, we want to force that moment of self-selection.
Hmm.
So only those ideal patients, that ideal avatar goes, you know what, I'm really interested. And that takes a marketing guru. It takes a marketing company that understands the alignment of what you're going for, what you care about, your specific brand, and aligning that with the ideal target. And that's exactly what Day One Marketing Agency can do for you. Jamie, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.